everybody. Can you hear me? Thanks for being here for the second breakout session today. We're going to focus on developing a cybersecurity career, empowerment, education, and opportunities. The panel today will be moderated by Catherine Latront, and she is heading up the Cyber Project at Georgetown University, so it's very exciting. Please feel free to ask questions. The panelists will each speak for a while. They have questions prepared of their own, but we would love to have the audience participate as much as possible. They're here for you to talk about how to develop a cybersecurity career. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily. You all can hear, I hope. Otherwise, I can usually project my voice pretty well. So I'd first like to introduce everyone that will be on the panel. The way we were thinking about speaking with you today is to give short, if you will, background on ourselves, basically to let you know how we got to where we are today. I mean, we each have different stories kind of illustrating that you can come to this field in many different ways, and there are different paths that could actually bring each individual to the ultimate field in cybersecurity, particularly as a woman. So we're going to we'll hear a little bit from all of us, and we've saved plenty of time for hopefully a lot of questions and more dialogue from you guys, so you can kind of direct us into the area that you're most interested in hearing. So to my left is Lisa, and Lisa's the founder and CEO of Women's Society of, and you're going to have to say
it.
Cyberjitsu. I like the name. To her, I guess it's left, still left, is Emily. Emily is the director of trust and safety at Facebook, and she's also a former supervisory special agent at the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And then at the end is Kevin. Kevin is the managing director of Security Incident Response Team at Goldman Sachs and former Foreign Service officer at the U.S. State Department. I believe you all have our bios in the pamphlet, so you can kind of get a little sense of our different and diverse background. A few things that I wanted to, drawing upon my own experiences, and oh, by the way, I'm Catherine, as Emily said. I wanted to leave you with a few points that I've learned along the way as I've worked on developing a career and a life, if you will, a personal life, and then kind of hand it over to everybody. And then we can come back and talk a little more descriptive about it. So first, I started here, actually. I'm an alum of the law school, and it was a long time ago, but I graduated in 1993. So I remember my first class, actually, that I sat in. I was 21, right out of undergrad, very inexperienced, never had a real job in my life. And I remember when I got to class, I'm one of those people who want to get there early. Room was pretty empty in this building when I got there, and a gentleman sat near me, and he looked much older than I was. So I was thinking, I must be in the wrong room. And then I started speaking with him, and he said, oh, you know, his background, we're exchanging, he says, I'm a cardiologist. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, I am in big trouble. I said, I made it into this school, but remember, as we've heard before, about not feeling like you belong, this was like shocking to me. And I don't know if you all remember about the 90s and the hairstyles then. If anyone ever, and don't go because it's a silly picture, looking up the book where I'm here at the law school, I came right from undergrad, and I remember I had this ponytail right at the top of the head. It used to be cool, I think. It was like a scrunchie, and I remember like, oh my God. And so I actually proceeded to go to my dorm room and cry and call my dad and say, that's it, I'm doomed. There's no way I can survive and get any decent grades with like people with a medical degree. So one thing that I have learned, and that's kind of one example, and it came up many different times in my life, that one, just because you feel that way, it doesn't mean that you have to project that. Meaning, I solved those feelings by working as hard as I can. At whatever issue, whatever I wanted to become competent on, I basically did everything I possibly could, including, if you read my bio, it's kind of bizarre that I've also studied a lot and got a lot of degrees. So I wasn't just happy with the law degree from NYU Law School, which is a phenomenal school, as you know, but I went on and got a master's degree and a PhD. So it was because I wanted to learn more and be better at what I was doing while I was working in the government. So that was one lesson. And I remember my dad told me growing up, my dad immigrated here from Italy, and he didn't have any money when he came over here. And growing up, he didn't speak English well, and he couldn't help me with my math. And I used to always complain, and he said to me, you know, there may be many people that you'll meet in life that have a lot more than you, right? Whether it is money, whether it is parents that can help you with your homework. But he told me, you'll never, though, have to be in a situation where people work harder than you. And I remember I took that to heart, and I just continued to work hard. Now, in the field of cybersecurity and being a female, I can tell you that you will always be, and I don't see this changing anytime in the near future, few compared to the many men. So I've also learned, and I think a good takeaway is that you need to get comfortable also in that field, that you may be at times the only woman at the meeting, at the dinner, at the conference, on a panel, and then just kind of get used to it. Another last point that I'll make before, I'm sure everybody has a lot of other points, we might overlap, is that I also learned that I had to be willing to take risks and make decisions that I wasn't quite sure would be the best for my career, and kind of just say, well, I'm going to try it. Because if I hadn't done that, one, I wouldn't have gotten my master's and PhD, because when I was then, at the time, a lawyer at CIA, everyone thought it was quite bizarre that a lawyer at the agency would be getting a master's at night, because after all, you just needed a JD. And then when I decided I was going to go and continue with my PhD, my then bosses found it very strange, right? But I said, okay, I think I want to do this. I think it'll make me a better intelligence officer, even if they don't believe it. So I took a risk, and then I also took a risk by leaving that job when 9/11 happened, and not having a clearance or a paycheck, went to the Hill to investigate the investigations of 9/11. That was a pretty scary move. I also then quit that job after 3 months because I hated it, worst job in my life. I tell my students, don't take that as you should never work on the Hill, but it was a specific, investigation that was very political. And when I quit, I did not have a clearance anymore because the Senate had taken up my clearance, and they were also paying my salary. And that led, coincidence and luck also helped, but having a good resume and working hard helps. That's what led me to a friend saying, well, General Scowcroft at the White House is looking for a lawyer to be on the president's board. As his general counsel, you should put your resume in. And I did that. And if I hadn't have taken risks all along the way and done things that were unusual, my peers, for instance, in the general counsel's office, weren't doing what I was doing. So I kind of was this black sheep or oddball, but for me, it felt right. It didn't really fit in with everyone, but I learned, well, I wouldn't have the field of work in the cyber field that I have today if I wasn't willing to kind of take those risky moves. So taking risks, I think, is part of what you kind of learn, whether you're male or female, but I think particularly for females, you'll have to get comfortable doing that as well. Lisa, over to you.
All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm actually Lisa Jiggets. I dropped the foreman when I moved to California. Once again, I am the founder and CEO of the Women's Society of Cyber Jiu-Jitsu, and I'll touch briefly on why I started that once I wrap up how I got into the field. I think I was fairly lucky in that I always knew what I wanted to do. So to me, if you know what you want to do early, you can now focus, right, on your classes, your training. So if you guys are in that place, I think you can fast track yourselves. But I always knew I wanted to be a hacker. When I was 15 or so, when that movie, when I saw the movie Sneakers, does anybody know that? Robert Redford, back in the 80s. I was always taking things apart at home. I love gadgets. I'm a geeky type of person. So if there's a new gadget out, I want to get it and play with it and take it apart. And not necessarily put it back together the way it came out. But back then, my dad came home with this typewriter-looking thing. It was a computer. And I was like, oh, what's that? So we started going to these computer club meetups. And I learned how to install games, of course, using DOS back then. And the game back then was Doom, which they've now remade, right? Which I haven't played yet. But I figured out how to use the cheat code so you can become God and never die. So that was awesome. But fast forward, you know, like I said, I always knew I wanted to be a hacker. I don't even know, I don't think I knew what it was even called back then. I was so, like, that's so cool. How do you do that? Scratch it for a few years. I joined the military, and during that time, I did do some cybersecurity, but it was more, you know, CNA, as they call it, for policy, and because Bush came out with the FISMA Act. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Basically, all government systems have to be certified and approved, basically tested and made sure that they're good to be on the network. So I got a taste of that professionally, but before I even joined, I already knew, you know, Linux, Unix, and DOS, of course. So I joined the military, and which was the lowest, well, no, that was the easiest way to get out of the house, but all the systems, all my jobs were, had Unix backend systems. So when it came time to have somebody work on those systems, I raised my hand. So that's the first nugget. Take initiative. Take advantage of every opportunity that you may see or not even know is there, right? So I was the sysad for these systems while I was in the military. Got out, went into the federal government, which was actually the lowest paying job offer that I got, go figure. But my mentor at the time, Henry Sneed, who was not even a cyber guy, he was an IT guy. He's like, Lisa, you need to get these certs before you get out. So in that last year, I got like all my certs, like 6 certs. And I started with A+, Network+, CCNA, MCSE, right? Then I did like a security cert, because Security Plus wasn't out back then. And I still hadn't had my degree by then, because I was like, well, you know, I know my stuff. I don't need a degree. So I go into the government, and I really am itching to do hacking. Like, how do I get into this? And I still had no direction, no mentor, because he wasn't a cyber guy, you know. So by then, while I was working in the government for 3 years, I was at the Department of Interior. I got my CSSP, and at this job, I made myself the title security manager of our division. It was just our little division, but hey, on my resume, it says IT security manager. You got to fluff your resume sometimes, and that's the truth. It is. You got to play the game. So, but I could speak to all the stuff that I did. So you're going to have to, you know, work your resume, work your experience into a security type resume eventually. So it reads security, all the little nuggets of words that they like to see. So, but at this job, the network guys down in the basement were contractors, and we weren't really allowed to talk, which is, you know, it's a government contractor thing. But I said, can you set me up a span port so I can monitor the traffic? And I was surprised that they did. So a span port allows you to monitor the traffic in line, right? So I set up Snort, which is an IDS. And then I also set up an FTP server, which I was able to get in from home through VNC, which was bad, because VNC is an insecure protocol, right? So that was fun. And that's on my resume. Moving forward, I got out and went private sector because I wanted more money, because I knew how much money we could make now. And I was like, I know some stuff. So I actually had a hookup, which is another point I wanted to get to, was your network, right? A lot of jobs come from people you know that know somebody that knows somebody, and jobs are not on the job board necessarily. So she gave me a hint of what the interview questions were, which I already knew the answers to anyway, but I got the job. I was doing CNA, and back then we would go to customer sites, assess their network, run Nessus and those types of tools to do vulnerability analysis, and come back and do the paperwork side, which I hated. So, like I said, I knew what I liked and didn't like by that point. And then I joined a hacker group by then, right? It was all guys, of course, which is sometimes can be uncomfortable and intimidating. But hey, I was like, because a friend of mine that I worked with, he was like, this is how you do it. And he showed me using Metasploit. I was like, that's it? You guys know what Metasploit is? Yeah, it's in Cali, the pen testing tool. So I was like, oh, cool. So I started, you know, going to this hacker group, hacker meetup. And it fell apart, but I had learned some stuff by then, which leads me to why I started WSC. I didn't have a place to go that I felt comfortable to elevate my skill set. So, I always say I created this nonprofit, this organization for selfish reasons, because I didn't have a place to go that I felt comfortable, that I could ask stupid questions and be amongst like-minded women. So a lot of what we see in our organization is what I wanted for myself. So we are where we are now, 4 years later, and we do a lot of mentoring. So that's the last nugget I wanted to mention. I think Renee touched on this in there, is you don't need to officially say, will you be my mentor? It doesn't work like that. In the real world, it doesn't work like that. Great if it does, there's programs out there, but you build relationships with people. Like here, you may see somebody in another conference, and then you'll see them again in another conference, and you're starting to talk to the same people. You ask questions, and that's how you build. If you want to flat out ask, will you be my mentor? They may say yes. But it takes a lot of time of, the person's time to just kind of coddle you. Nobody likes to be coddled or likes to coddle. So closing that out, find a mentor, no matter what stage you are. I still have mentors now because I'm trying to elevate myself, right? Find a mentor, network. This is a great opportunity to network with your peers and everyone in the industry and take initiative. So that's my story.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Vatcher, and I'm a director of trust and safety at Facebook. And when they asked me to join this panel, I guess I hadn't really thought about it in a while, how I ended up where I ended up. But I think the one thing that I want to share with you guys, and I'll kind of tell you the story, is be open to everything. I work at Facebook. How many people in this room are on Facebook? Yep, just a couple. When I started my career, Mark Zuckerberg was in middle school. So there are going to be jobs, particularly in cybersecurity, that do not exist today. And that's one of the things that you need to keep your minds open to, is that your dream job may not yet exist. So kind of going back to the beginning, like she said before, in the 1900s, from the time I was about 4, I decided I was going to be a trauma surgeon, and nobody was going to change my mind ever. I watched St. Elsewhere. I watched every medical program, Emergency 51, for those of you who are older. I watched it all. And I loved medicine, and I just thought that's where I was going to end up. So point number 1 is don't be so focused on something that you put on the blinders. I think there are a lot of people, particularly when I talk to younger people going into college, they're like, I'm going into government, so I'm going to be a political science major, and I'm going to use all of my credits to further expand my major and maybe minor in alternative political science or something. And I tell them, don't do that. You need to take art history. You need to take some architecture. I went to Cornell University. They have a hotel school there where you can take wine. Literally, you can take wine. You have to be 21, but you can take a class on wine. You need to be well-rounded, and that's what's so important. So no matter what it is that you choose to do, pick lots of other stuff around it. Like they say the proverbial, I took underwater basket weaving. Take it. Because once you get so far along in your schooling or your career, you're really spending a lot of time focusing, but it's when you're in the position to have the opportunity to become more well-rounded is when you need to take advantage of that. So I ended up at Cornell, which is in upstate New York. It's very cold, very beautiful. And by the time I got through chemistry, organic chemistry, and then the dreaded physics, I realized that I was not going to get through the MCATs in one piece. So at that point, I panicked. And the reason that I panicked was because I had these blinders on for the last 16 years of my life, where I thought this is the only thing I can do, this is all I want to do, and I have no idea what else is out there in the world. So even if you're sitting here today and you're like, I'm going to be X, Y, and Z, great, go for it. but make sure along the way you pay attention to everything else out there. Your career path will not be linear. You're not going to go from here to here to here. You're going to do one of these. You're going to do loops, and one of the important things that you must remember in the journey of figuring out what you want to be when you grow up, and to be honest with you, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. There is no time or point in your life where you have to figure that out, and that literally could be a moving target. You have to remain open to everything. As we've all said, you need to find mentors, and those mentors can come from anywhere. One of the other shows I watched, in addition to St. Elsewhere, was a show called LA Law. And I was like, holy crap, that's what lawyering's about. Oh my God, that's kind of cool. And then for those of you who watched Ally McBeal, and it's like, television really does kind of form some of our thoughts about professions, particularly if you don't have role models. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I didn't have any doctors in my family. I don't know where I got it all from. But I watched LA Law, and when I realized that I could crush the LSATs, wasn't going to make it through the GREs, not a math person, and the MCATs weren't going to work either, I took the LSATs. I'm like, LA Law, here I come. It's not like you see on TV necessarily, and you figure that out when you get there. I do not regret my law degree, not for one moment. I was one of those students that loved being a student. In fact, I became a professional student until my mother made me quit school, and she said, because you need a job. So I got my bachelor's, I got my first master's, I got my second master's, I got my law degree. I was on my way to my PhD when my mother made me quit. I'd still be a student if I was independently wealthy. I love the process of learning. So it's okay to love school. Some people see it just as a means to an end. And I had a lot of friends in law school who hated every minute of it, but then loved being lawyers. I loved every minute of law school, and I got out and I went to a firm where I hated every minute of it. And it's okay to make mistakes. And that's really important to know, because we always, as we age, we think when we're children, we make mistakes, so we're going to get it right as adults, and that's total BS. We make mistakes every single day, and it's what we do after we make that mistake that makes us who we are. We also have to be brave, particularly as women. I'm from Westchester County. I was a Jewish girl, I'm a Democrat. Who would have ever thought that someone like me could end up in the FBI? I had no role models. I am for banning the Second Amendment. I am everything that pretty much they aren't in the FBI, and I'm a woman. Be one of those women that's comfortable wherever it is you go, and you sit at that table. When you walk into a boardroom and you see a woman who's sitting in one of the chairs up against the wall, you tell her to get up and you tell her to go to the table. We need men, we need women, we need to work together, and that's really, really important, but we must have a place at the table. So as I'm sitting at my law firm, I was given an assignment. I had to write a 100-page brief. We were representing a client who was an unsecured creditor in a Ponzi scheme. And all I could think of was, kill me now. I literally was like, if I get hit by a bus on the way to work, I won't have to go to work. It's at that moment you need to be brave. And you need to say, if this is not working for me, you need to have the courage to change it. And that's very, very hard to do. I end up in the job that, you know, a Jewish girl from Westchester, or she's a lawyer, she's Ivy League educated, like that's what you're supposed to do, right? Imagine the day when I finally got up the courage to go to my nice Jewish mother and say, I'm going to be an FBI agent. I had a couple drinks, I think, before that, had to prepare, but that was such an important moment in my life because I did something that was not expected of me. I may have been leaving, you know, the good career, and all my mother knew of the FBI is that you run around with guns and get shot at. From television movies again. One little step back on the television movies. Everything I've said, you're thinking now, okay, I shouldn't listen to television and movies. It's going to end me up in the wrong career. And this is the God's honest truth. When I was in college, I saw Silence of the Lambs. and I decided I needed to be her. And that's where the seed was planted. But the problem is I had no role models, and I didn't seek anybody out, so all I did was immediately assume that I could not do it. I'm 5'2", I'm not athletic, I never held a gun, I've never gotten in a fight. All the things that you think of. I'm not tall, I'm not a man, I wasn't Christian, I wasn't in the military, I didn't have a short haircut, like all the things you think of when you think FBI agent, I'm not. So I didn't think that I could do it. And one of the things you heard at the lunchtime speaker is you can do it, and you have to convince yourself of that, even if it is something that is outlandish, like me becoming an FBI agent. And on 9/11, when I was an FBI agent, I ended up at the Pentagon that night. I was a baby agent. I still had no idea what I was doing. But as I'm walking away from there, I realized that I had the courage to change a situation where I knew that I wasn't happy, and I wasn't going to be happy if I stayed there for the next 40 or 50 years. I did something about it, and I got to work on the biggest terrorism case that's ever occurred in the history of the FBI. Be brave, take risks, don't have the blinders on, and just kind of be who you are. I'd still be an FBI agent today had I kept those blinders on, but one day Facebook called me out of the blue. And they said they wanted to talk to me. I said, about what? I thought that I'd sent them a bad search warrant or something. And they said, no, we want to talk to you about a job. And I said, a job? For who? They're like, for you. I'm like, for me? I mean, it was a ridiculous conversation. They probably thought I was an idiot. And I said no. And I hung up the phone. It was a Friday. And I kind of thought about it over the weekend. I'm like, I can't do that. I mean, they're all like 12 and engineers. And I think, where am I going to fit in? And the recruiter, God bless her, called me back on Monday. She said, just come talk to us. So I nearly made the biggest mistake of my life when I said no, because I should have said yes. Even if I turned down the job, you never give up the opportunity to talk to somebody who does something different from you. Never, ever, ever pass up that opportunity. You learn something from everybody you talk to every single day. I flew out to California, and I think the reason that I rocked the interview is because I didn't care. It's not like, you know, when you walk into a job interview, you're like, I have to have this job. You're thinking of like, what does the interviewer want to hear? And you do all this research, and you sound like a robot. And I showed up, I'm like, this is what I think. And I was just myself. And by the end of the interview, I knew that I had to work there. And 2 days later, they called me, they offered me the job, and it was again another pivotal moment in my life where I took that leap of faith. And I have this little silly greeting card thing I keep in my apartment. It's a saying that I have followed for years now, and that's the last thing I will share with you. I know I've gone over time, so I'm a New Yorker, I talk a lot. It says, leap and the net will appear. And I think that is just the way we need to live our lives. We obviously need to do everything to prepare ourselves. I went to good schools, I got good grades, I studied, I did everything that I had to do that put me in the position to land me a job that did not exist when I left school. So if you remember all those things and leap, the net will appear, live your life by that, and you will end up in a career that might not exist today, that you never thought was your dream job, that is actually your dream job. But know that you can do it. Talk to other women, talk to men, talk to everybody. You learn something from everyone you talk to. That's enough for me. So, all yours.
Okay. Goodness. All right. As was mentioned, I at Goldman Sachs, I lead the security incident response team there. I've been doing that for about 3 years now. But before that, I had a 30-year career with CIA. And I joined the agency right out of university and went out for various internships and then joined the Directorate of Operations, which is really the intel collecting arm of the agency, or at least one of the major ones. And I had a fabulous career, I spent about half my time overseas and went all around the world and spent time in the war zone. And then towards the end of my career, they said, it's time for you to come back, and we want you to lead a cyber center for us. And I remember saying, you know, I'm not really very technical, or maybe not technical at all, and like, don't you have somebody else more qualified to do this? And they said, no, we want you to do it. I said, okay. And I think one of the messages you've heard throughout this is don't turn down any opportunities that are presented to yourself, even if you think that there perhaps are other better or more qualified people out there. And so I took over this center, which was really the focal point of the agency at the time for things cyber. And as you all know, like, cyber has changed our lives. It's changed the way we communicate, how we like get around and do things and organize things. And it's also changed every profession out there. Whether it's financial services or espionage, it's changed it all and will continue to change it. As Emily mentioned, you can't even imagine what jobs are possibly out there. So as we looked at this center, we started to think about how we could do things differently, and we went through a bit of a transition there, a transformation. And I think a couple of things like that I learned that are relevant to this discussion and just the whole field of cybersecurity. First, if you can imagine it, you can actually do it. In cyber, it's only a matter of how much time, effort, and money you want to spend. Any network can be penetrated, and that presents a whole career that is, I think, extremely exciting. And the field of cybersecurity, they need you, okay? They need everyone to be a part of this. Because at Goldman Sachs, we have a very small team that does cybersecurity, but it's a big multinational company, and it's all over the world, 35,000 people, and we need every single person to be a part of it, and there are so many different kinds of jobs that you can contribute to this. The defense side of this is only going to become bigger as we go forward. So you can do the offense. There are plenty of places to do that. And there's defense is also really, really interesting. But you just got to do it, and you got to lean into it, and just say, I'm going to give it a try. Interestingly, it's really an exciting career, as you may know. It's in demand. It's lucrative. Okay, there's like negative unemployment in this space. It's increasingly important because people are actually realizing that if you don't protect your network, you don't have a company. And there is something for everyone. And on top of it, it's a bit of a secret. Okay, people are only discovering now the power of cyber and the importance of cybersecurity. So this is a really, really important time and a moment for you all to seize it, and I would say just go for it. And you'll find your way around. And as Renee mentioned at lunchtime, there is something for everyone. I would encourage you to go as technical as you can, okay? Because the thing about adversaries is they have virtually unlimited resources, and if you're going to be on the defense of that, it's hard, it's complicated, it's very complex and increasingly technical. And so I would encourage you to do that to the maximum extent that you can. But don't be afraid of it, because there are things that everybody can do along the way. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we really need you, because I don't know, if we don't get our arms around this problem, I don't know where it ends.
Okay, so why don't we open it up for questions? I think we've got enough time still left over, so we haven't gone terribly over our goal, which is okay.
We did.
So does anyone, if you have questions or want to kind of dig more into something that we said that might have struck you as interesting or further discussion, if you just come up to the microphone and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Balam, and I'm a information security manager at the pharma company, but very like a entry to mid-level. I've changed my careers in between, took the leap, like you have said. But I'm not a technical person. But my question to you is, what can help me take my career to the next level? Should I go for a degree? Should I go for certifications? Because I'm debating in between. I worked in privacy as well and information security. So I don't know. Should I take privacy certificates? Should I take information? Like,
What's the next level for you?
To grow, right? To understand the technical stuff, or because I'm interested more into the information security and cybersecurity, not like privacy too much. But I fall into the team where both are like related to each other, so I try to help both the teams. So
One thing I just want to
next-
say is pick what is meaningful to you. You spend more time at work than you do in any other place in your life.
Right.
So if you're not happy at work, it's going to bleed over into everything else in your life. So what you just said here is you're not as interested in the privacy side.
Right.
And for those of you who are, like, get into it. It is awesome, and we need lots of privacy people. But stick with what matters to you and what's interesting to you. So get the certifications that are going to advance you in the IT side, rather than saying, oh, if I just get this privacy certification, that may not even help you get the job over here.
Right.
So find what your passion is
Right.
and follow it to the end. And along the way, there may be openings in something you didn't even realize, but just trying to get a certificate to get a next job is not the way to go. At Facebook, there are people that work here who have not graduated from college. Heck, our founder didn't graduate from college. It's not necessarily only always about the education. It's about your knowledge, your skills, your abilities. That's a very government thing to say, the KSAs. But it's about getting you to where you want to be as a person.
Right.
So find your passion and go in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexis Blaine. I have another sort of mid-career pivot question, and didn't realize at the outset how relevant this would be to the whole panel, but I wondered if you might talk a little bit, my particular background is as a government lawyer, and if you might talk a little bit about how to help the private sector understand government experience and how to make that transition or translation work effectively.
Government.
So you mean how do you transfer from the government to the private sector?
That's right, and you know, sometimes that involves translating your resume, like the KSA thing, sort of moving from the acronymic world of Washington D.C. to a world that speaks a little differently.
Okay, I'll take a shot at that. It's been 3 years at Goldman Sachs. I'm still in transition. Okay. In most cases, I would say, at least in my experience, it's completely different. And the mindset is completely different. And sometimes, and that can be, especially for somebody that, you know, has been doing it for a long time, a real hard transition. Not that it's impossible, but it's just the way business operates, particularly a company or a firm like Goldman Sachs, is completely different than CIA operates. Okay, for example, okay, I was used to CIA, we just like make up everything as we go along, okay? We remember going down to very senior meetings at the White House, and we're in the car, and what are we going to talk about? Well, how about this? Or maybe we try that. Oh, yeah, that's good. Let's do that. At Goldman Sachs, one never does that, all right? And the other thing about it is, it maybe is changing, but for certainly agencies that live in a classified world, when you're in private industry, you're never off. I mean, you're you're receiving emails, you're doing stuff, taking phone calls, you know, constantly, 24/7 in some cases. Whereas in the government, you know, you put in your 8 or 10 or 12 hours, then you go home. And there's, right.
I think one thing with that, you would ask how industry can help government in way. It's really about sitting down at the table and understanding each other. I think one of the things that's really helped me in my transition to private industry is I came from the government side. So I would, when private companies hire folks like us, we get it, and we get it from your perspective. We understand an assistant United States attorney, when they need certain information, they're doing an investigation, they're writing a search warrant or a pen or whatever it is they're doing, we can understand it from their perspective. So it's either bringing those folks into private industry, or if they're not, it's about communication. And I think that's part of the problem, is because sometimes it's seen as very adversarial, particularly if you read the news lately. You know, the government and the tech industry, and it's like one's here, and it can get very hot. I think what we need to do is really better understand each other's capabilities, but then also on a human level, be able to communicate with each other. And as he said, the transition is like, it's insane. Going from the FBI to Facebook is like the opposite. You know, from security clearances and shutting off at the end of the day to, like, my first day I walked in and I got shot by Nerf guns. Like, we have Nerf gun battles at work. It's a little different than the FBI. It's just, it is bringing the government experience, because that's what private industry wants. They want to understand all of this knowledge that we have from being government officials to how that can advance the mission, the goals, and the needs of the company. So I think at the end of the day, it's really all about communication. It's understanding each other on a personal level, not looking at everything as it's adversarial. We're never all going to get what we want, but we need to come together and figure out a way where we can make it work as best as we can on both sides. But it's not easy. That's my.
Well said.
I had a two-part question. So coming from someone who's very, very early in their career, I'm a first-year law student here. I'm just beginning to learn about cyber issues and issues in privacy, and I was wondering if you would recommend like a good entry point to have directed information without being overwhelmed by everything out there, and to learn about more about these issues and learn more about the industry, and without like being totally immersed. Like, what's a good entry point? And the second part would be if you and your professional experiences had a point where you were a student or even more early on working somewhere and had multiple interests or passions, what helped you have some clarity on what was the right thing to move forward with if you really are, you know, you have multiple interests and you feel like you've explored them and still really aren't quite sure what the best path is forward?
So I would say about,
I'll take the
add
second.
something about the first part. As a student, I mean, what's nice about where you are now is you have the luxury of being exposed to different classes, right? So part of what I tell all graduate students, but including law school students at Georgetown, is that take the opportunity now to experiment, right? Even in law school. If there are courses that are focused on cyber, which you see more and more these days at a number of different law schools, then just try those classes out. And if it's not, classes that tend to incorporate cyber issues, look at those as well. They might not be called a cyber security class, but for instance, a lot of the national security law classes, which is what I teach, and intelligence law classes, and are related to the cyber classes. So I would look at, you know, the syllabus, the professor's bio, and then while you're at school, try to get exposed to the extent you can, you know, to kind of diversify and see if you're interested in it. When you're working in the field, you'll also have other opportunities. You know, first, you don't have to stop taking classes, right? You can, you know, when I was in the government, particularly at CIA, they have a lot of internal training. They're required for you to get promoted to take these courses. I found them myself not satisfying enough. So I went outside of work and then looked at, a master's degree in national security studies, it was called at the time. So you can continue to learn more if you think you're interested in either getting better at your job, but also getting better doesn't mean just getting technically better at this specific position. It means becoming a broader, more knowledgeable person. So it may actually take you into different fields. And, the cyber opportunities at work sometimes present itself without you doing much. I mean, the cyber work for me began, so I was in the national security field as a lawyer at CIA, and in 1997, I'd been there about a year, I was given an account, and it was called information warfare. So I was assigned it, other lawyers had different assignments, and I became fascinated and interested in terms of what the US government and the intelligence community was doing at the time, what other governments were doing in this space that was then called information warfare. And then I used my background in international law, which I had studied here under, he's passed out, but Tom Frank. I took his seminar here on international law, fell in love with that topic, wanted that to be my area of expertise, and I combined that with the cyber issues, then called information warfare. And I've been working on and writing and publishing, and my work in the White House and in the think tank world has all been combining the international law with the now called cybersecurity issues. So those opportunities will present themselves both while you're in school and while you're in your job, and you just have to be willing to jump at it, right? To test it.
And I want to piggyback on that real quick. This is a great point that you're at right now because there's so many directions that you could go. There's a couple things, conferences obviously like this, but the more, even besides, New York has SummerCon and some others that are technical, but then there's others. But nonetheless, going to conferences, you get to be exposed to the different technologies of what people are talking about, right? And then, you guys familiar with meetup.com? Yeah, definitely join those groups. You never know who you're going to meet. Join those groups and attend those workshops, right? They're like free and cheap versus having to take a college class would, cost way more. And that will help, give you exposure to what you like and you find out what you don't like. That's my 2 cents on that.
I have one thing on part 2. You don't need to find everything you need to be satisfied in just your job. So don't think that I have to find a job that meets like all these things that I like to do. I am completely like ADHD on like interests. It's ridiculous. When I was in law school, I went to, I got my paramedic certificate at night while I was in law school because I didn't have enough to do. As I said, I loved medicine, and I knew that I figured I couldn't be a trauma surgeon, so I became a paramedic. So I volunteered nights, weekends, whenever, as a paramedic, and that kind of met that need that I have while I was still working as a lawyer. So don't just think about your job as the end-all, be-all, the way I'm going to fulfill myself. When I was an FBI agent, I was on the child abduction team. So finding missing kids was like my thing. So now I'm at Facebook. I can't go out and arrest bad guys anymore. So what did I do at Facebook is I went to my management and I said, I want to create the Amber Alert system on Facebook. They're like, well, that's not exactly part of your job, but okay. And a year and a half ago, we launched Amber Alerts on Facebook. We're now in 8 countries, and it's kind of my side job at work is I'm going country to country to launch the program because I wanted to figure out a way that I could still fulfill my needs of wanting to find missing kids, even though it wasn't part of my job. And I also am a board member at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So it may not be part of my job, but I'm fulfilling all these other things that I really like to do just as a person in my life. So think about your life as being more broad than just your job.
Good afternoon. A lot has been said to create enthusiasm for people to study technicalities of cybersecurity. Well, I want to reverse the table a bit because I hold a master's degree in computer networks from NYU, and I work as a cybersecurity analyst, and I've just started in my career. So for people who are non-technical, everybody has encouraged them to study technical, but since I am technical, what would you like to say to me in terms of being able to understand this field better?
I think you have an advantage knowing the technical side. Because we tell even, folks that know they don't want to be in the technical area, like managers, instructors. I mean, I think you have a leg up if you have the technical chops.
What should I do further to, that is my question.
That's a really, really good question. And with the technical expertise, you do actually have an advantage. But I think what I would encourage you to do is, because typically technical people, there's like this, okay, and they're very focused, and they know that, and they know it really, really well. You can be successful there, okay, but you probably can be even more successful if you lift your head up and you look around and you see how that piece relates with this piece, with this piece, and with this piece. And if you want to do cybersecurity right, you got to have it all. You got to have a good governance. You've got to have the technical piece. You have to know what your network looks like. You have to understand the adversary, the intelligence piece. And if you can't weave it together, you have a bunches of islands of excellence that don't really give you the kind of security that you need. So I don't have a better answer than that, but like, lift up your head, look around, and figure out how to make those pieces fit together in a better way, because every company, every enterprise, government, private sector, they all have that problem.
I don't know, what do you guys think? Because I always have this battle, like, should we know a little bit about a lot, or should we know our specific field and become an expert, and then at a certain point, branch out? Because I'm ADHD with that too.
I think one of the most important things is, no matter what field you're in, to have good communication skills. Being able
Definitely.
to orally communicate in writing.
Yes.
So if you're a CS major, don't take just math and science and engineering. Take the classics, take literature, take poetry, whatever it is, because no matter what it is you do, if you can't communicate, you are not going to be successful. You may be you could code the hell out of anything, but you're going to sit in your cubicle and you're going to code the hell out of stuff your whole career, and you're not going to advance because you can't communicate. So I think you having the technical background is amazing, and that's such an incredible asset, but make sure you also work on your communication, interpersonal. You need the skills, because at the end of the day, it's human and human interaction that's going to advance missions, and not necessarily just your technical ability.
Yeah, take a writing course
Yeah.
or a public speaking course, or actually both, or
Toastmasters.
several.
Talk in front of people.
Yep.
Exactly.
That used to scare the crap out of me. I just was like, oh my God, everybody's looking at me and they're judging me, and I'm not going to say the right thing, and I'm going to stumble over my words. And then I had a mentor who's like, shut up.
Just
you
do
know,
it.
just get up there and talk. And the more that you do this, the better communicator you are. People will look to you as a leader. And you just need, you know, they say fake it till you make it. I get up here some days, I'm like, oh my God, all these smart people judging me. I don't fit in. They're probably like, why is she here? Like, just get that out of your brain, get in front of people, and talk about what's important to you, and you're going to be fine.
Thank you very much.
Hello. So I think you sort of answered my question, but I was standing, so I'll ask it.
Ask it anyway.
So
Great.
I don't imagine that my question, I don't imagine any of you having the problem, or anybody in this room, but I'm going to ask it. Some women tend to, you get at a table, but you do not speak. Or you're in a meeting and you do not speak. You're scared, or whatever the case may be, and you hold back your thoughts, your ideas. You're smart, you have the degrees, you're on point, but you get there. So it does a lot of things. You don't get to the next level, you know, it holds you back. Any advice to sort of counter that?
Stop it.
Confidence, build your confidence.
One thing that our COO, Sheryl Sandberg, if anybody's read her book, Lean In, if you haven't, I recommend it. But one of the things that she said will always stick with me is she was offered a job one day at Google. And she said, when you're offered a seat on the rocket ship, you don't ask which seat. You just get on. And I'm like, holy cow, because I think women always worry, like, what's in the job description? Something came up earlier today, and I read this article, I wish I had brought this here today, where it said that men are like a gazillion more times likely to apply for a job where they don't have all the things, and women look at the job description, they're like, yep, nope, yep, not qualified. And we can't do that. And so we have to get over this, that we're here, we're not going away, we belong, and we bring a lot to the table. So if you don't do it now, and some women, you know, are at the next meetings, you say to yourself, I'm gonna say one thing. I'm gonna start with baby steps. You don't need to walk in and be like, I'm here, and just take over the room. But you need to be prepared. You need to know your stuff. You need to be ready for that meeting, and then you just need to take that leap and say it. But don't hold yourself back because of any fears that you are harboring. You are just as good. You belong there, and your voice is important. Speak up.